Welcome everyone to another episode of compARTE here at the page of Diamante Arts and Cultural Center. This is our second show of 2021, and my guest today is Betto Herrera. Betto Herrera approaches Afro Latin dances as a way to create community and spread cultural awareness. He has been a leader in the community by promoting and educating people about the historical contributions of Latinos in the US through music and dance. Bienvenido, Betto.
Muchas gracias.
So, Betto, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you end up in North Carolina?
Oh, okay. So that's a long story. My dad was a fisherman. He was from Peru. And he met my mom in Guayaquil. So he was some half Peruvian and half Ecuadorian, but he passed away when I was only 3 years old. And so so my mom being a single, a widow and with three kids, and me being the oldest, she was able to finish dental school. But like in our countries, we do not have dental insurance, so she was looking for a place to sustain us, right? A place with opportunities for us. So we ended up moving to New Jersey. And in Jersey, after trying out college and not being able to pay for it, I ended up joining the military. So I enlisted in the Marines. That's how I ended up here in North Carolina.
And you picked the hardest one, right?
Well, I didn't know much about it, but I like the uniform. So
There you go. So where were you stationed in North Carolina?
in Camp Lejeune.
Camp Lejeune, yes.
Yes.
And that's after you were done with your first 4 years or whatever, you decided to stay?
Actually, I got a medical discharge because I was in a car accident and I have suffered many injuries, and therefore I wasn't able to deploy. And during that time, 2000 until 2004, was when a lot of deployments were happening into Iraq and Afghanistan. So.
Oh, I understand. So what you're here in Fayetteville and you say, you know what, this is a nice place to stay?
Well, yeah, I was in Jacksonville and I did not like it at all. Because I mean there's not much to do, especially for Latinos. There was only like one night, Latin night at the E Club where I started teaching dances because I really wanted to dance with somebody. And I also started teaching dance classes at the USO. And then after that, I think there was some type of restaurant, like that Latin restaurant, all everything mixed, Colombian, Puerto Rican food, Dominican food in there.
Yeah.
So they will turn it into like a club, a Latin club at night. But I ended up just driving to Raleigh quite often on the weekends. And I met somebody here, so I ended up just coming here every weekend after that.
Oh, that makes sense. So have you always been into dancing?
Well, it sounds like a cliche, but in our culture, dance and music is part of our culture. Like we grow up with music and dance around us all the time. So yes, I grew up dancing, but not training to dance. I just grew up dancing, no formal training whatsoever. Just like moving along with what grandmother did in the kitchen. La abuelita steps. So yeah, doing that. Uh, but I never knew that I had like a natural knack for it, especially to be able to teach it until I started like being exposed here in the U.S. in New Jersey and then later in North Carolina.
It almost seems like, especially when you're raised up north, it always seems that people gravitate to the dancing, and it's a melting pot of people that
Mhm.
all get into dancing because it's a way to connect with each other's cultures in a way.
Yes, yes, especially like specifically salsa because salsa is mainly the rhythms are mainly Cuban, but a lot of other cultures have had like put their take on it and put like their sauce into it. Like there's a lot of Puerto Rican influence in salsa, a lot of Colombian influences, Dominican influence, and every country have plays something in it, so we're all able to identify with it. So yeah,
So you specialize in Afro Latin rhythms, am I
yes.
correct? And what does
Mhm.
that entail? What do you teach in your school? Because now you have a school, right?
Yes. So we mainly teach like most of the social dances, which is like the what we consider salsa, like the merengue, the bachatas. Those are like the Afro-Caribbean dances, like the social Afro-Caribbean dances. But for instance, within the term of salsa, you have a lot of different rhythms that go along because salsa is specifically is not a a musical rhythm, or I guess not really like a specific dance. You know how when you go to you go to a club and you dance with a Dominican person and they dance salsa different than the Puerto Rican, than the Cuban or the Colombian, it's because there are different ways to dance it and depending on the music. So like you have like guaracha, you have song, you have cha-cha, you have uh, charangas and mambos. All of those are danced differently. So whatever kind of like became popular in these different regions and whatever was there before, that kind of like mix into the style that they do nowadays.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a historian or follow it like you do, but a lot of people claim salsa as their own. So how do we know really what are the origins of it?
Oh, okay. So there is a saying in Cuba that son, the Cuban son, is the perfect marriage between the Spanish guitar and the African drum. So like that's like the best explanation that you can think about when you come into like what we call salsa. Salsa is like the perfect mix from both worlds. Like son was, and but so is the interesting thing is that like the evolution of this dance it hasn't been linear because just think about it like a tree, right? The enslaved Africans came into the Americas and they were spread out throughout the whole continent. So like there were those seeds from Africa went went to our continent and then they started to spread out into different rhythms. But then later on, those rhythms started like merging back together. So like for instance, right now we have a lot of jazz elements into salsa music
Mm.
that is a seed that was fue sembrada, it grew here in the States and then it just merged with the Afro-Caribbean rhythms again because they belong together. So that's the beautiful thing about it. Like even though a lot of people try to claim it, is from everybody. However, the more straight evolution did come from Cuba because of the big musical industry that Cuba had and the popularity of their casinos and all the different tourism that they had. So they became a big influencer.
So they're the main importers. But I'm
Yes.
assuming that, well, I don't want to go back, continue with this because I want to talk about your school.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
um, your school Mambo Dinamico, what do you guys specialize? What does entail to take classes and
Okay.
all that?
Okay. So we mainly concentrate on teaching people like salsa and everything that goes under that umbrella, right? Like all the different like the some how to identify those folkloric African rhythms that came across the Atlantic, and how you can adapt to those and how you can um, how it connects you with those roots, that element. So there's like a a bunch of dances. Like for instance, under the term of salsa, you have like rumba, for example. It was like right before the sun, and it's an Afro-Cuban dance. Just like it's the same, and there's something also called the theory of simultaneous discovery. Okay, so at the same time that rumba was growing or being developed in Cuba,
Mhm.
for example, you have bomba being done in Puerto Rico, which is
Mhm.
this is the same exactly same thing, but just in another island with a little different influences.
Mhm.
And now, and in Puerto Rico, it had a little different shape because you had some of the natives that they were already the Borincans, they were already there, so they added something extra to that mix. So, um, so some of that, which we talk about song, we talk about changui, we talk about cha cha cha, pilon, timba, guajiras, guarachas, and all of those things I consider salsa. But just so the important thing is for people to understand that all there are these differences, so that way when they actually go to dance with somebody, they don't get like, oh my God, that's not the right way. It's like, because there is no right way.
It depends what your partner's dancing, just
Uh,
follow along kind of thing. I
yeah.
understand. I tend to dance my salsa more like what people say New York style, but I don't know if it's true. It's just, it's a, you know, I don't know how to explain it, but more, it's more fluid. It's not so
Mhm.
choppy, I guess. I don't
Yeah.
know if I'm making myself clear, but
Yeah.
I don't know
No,
the
no,
terms.
it makes perfect sense, because, for instance, I started learning New York style like about 20 years ago, actually more than 20 years ago now. But so New York style developed in a linear way, so they dance from point A to point B. Okay, and it's because of the big in New York is so crowded, you cannot really go a different direction. You have to stay on that slot, right? So that particular setting helped develop that style. And also, there's a lot of influence from swing and from hustle, the Latin hustle. So those two elements were put into the salsa that came from Cuba, Puerto Rico,
Got it.
and it developed into what they call a New York style.
It makes a lot of sense. I hadn't thought about it that way, but yeah, so yeah. But I grew up the same way as you. I grew up dancing, and it was just part of,
Yeah, and it is.
it was part of us at home. I mean, my kids have gotten lessons from my mom, but my brothers, I have three brothers, and they all got lessons from my mom. This is how hold the young lady
Mhm.
and all that kind of stuff, and it was like
Yeah,
just normal.
yeah, and this is the what you just pointed out. It all goes back to African traditions. In African traditions, they pass on the information from one generation to the next generation. So the culturally, dance and music are like, okay, they're merged into their culture. So that I think that's what for us Latinos, that we have the mix of all these different elements and races in ourselves. We always go back to those things, like, sometimes without realizing it, that it has been part from all these cultures that we had in ourselves. So
So, in all your research, by chance, have you been able to pinpoint, let's say, la clave, like
mhm.
what African country that originated from, and maybe like where did we in the Caribbean pick up those rhythms? Because I'm assuming it depends what country in Africa and what slave country were being traded at that time may have a lot of influence. Am
Yeah,
I right?
the clave, you can trace it back to all in South. I'm sorry, in all in West Africa. Okay, so you can have all the way from, like, let me see, from, yeah, Guinea, Mali, all the way down, going down from Nigeria, all the way down to, like, Angola. Like, there are traces of claves and tresillo. Okay, with
What
yes,
is the difference between clave and cresillo?
tresillo.
Cresillo, ok.
Okay,
¿Cuál es la
so
diferencia?
for instance, when you play the clave, I play the clave like this. Ah, 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 ah. I call it like this. Brush my teeth, toothbrush, brush my teeth, toothbrush. Okay. Tresillo is the brush my teeth part. So it's brush my teeth, brush my teeth, brush my teeth, brush my kun
Okay.
kun can. And you hear that rhythm in many, like, especially in a lot of American songs, pop songs, like
Yeah, sure.
Despacito.
Yeah.
Despacito has it. Yeah, yeah. So, like, all the songs have the tresillo. So there's also no, like, another rhythm called the cinquillo, which is like it's basically like two hits in the tresillo. It's like can can. So, and
Sounds
those,
kind of like a waltz in a way.
exactly. Yes. And actually, some of the, like, that song by in Carmen, the from the musical. Da, 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 da. That's the cinquillo. That's the double up of the tresillo. Okay,
Wow, so
so
interesting.
like yeah, so like and then they have them. So like the clave is like it's like like a unit of measure, like a structure. So that way the drummers always refer back to that cycle, and it's a great representation of the circle in sound because it cycles back together. And the circle in African traditions is very important. Like for instance, a friend of mine told me, Ativa Royer told me that they in the there's a they have a belief that grandmothers and babies and newborns have this unique language that they can only understand each other. That's what we hear the grandmothers go like boo 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 boo, like kind of like that. When
Yeah.
yeah. So when they gather in the as a community, they gather in a circle and things happening in the middle, like astronomy. They look at the cycles of the stars and all that stuff. So it's like like the claves, all this unit of measures are part of that cycle, and that's how they are able to stay in sync with the music.
So interesting. So interesting. So, are the instruments that were used in Africa, are they very similar to the ones that we're using today in the salsa?
Uh, so there has been an adaptation of those instruments. Okay, for instance, the conga itself, back in the days, like when they used to do the djembes or the yuga drums, it was it was a log, and they used them to like to mash things like and then it will become like a mortar and a pestle, right? Until it was all hollow, and then they used that shell to do their drums, with like a goat skin or something.
Oh, so it was like it was a throwaway, but a repurposing of
A
that.
repurposing, yes, yeah, it was a tool. It was a
Mhm.
tool before, unless they purposely like will carve it, right? Okay, so there will be two approaches of that, but there are research done that it was like they repurpose them from those tools. So um, so what happened when they came? So this is a story, okay? When they were coming from across the Atlantic on those slave ships, the the Africans, they were like this, like head to toe, like just um,
Lined
stacked,
up and it's stacked up in
lined up,
those
yes,
ships,
on
right? Uh-huh.
under the deck. And so, and they used to be there for long periods of time without, they couldn't really move, they couldn't really get up. So, and they used to do all the necessities in there. Some of them will die. So every once in a while, like I don't even know how often, they will have to clean that up, and they will like move this the enslaved Africans to the main quarterdeck to kind of have an exercise time. Okay, during those exercise times, they started using clapping. They used to do chanting, la 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 la. They used to do stomping, boom, 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 boom. They used to get the boxes from wherever they used to carrying around and then using as drum. They used to get the barrels and they use them as drums to kind of like dance. A lot of them they used to like pray or send dance towards like the goddess Jemaya, because she's the goddess of the oceans, like the mother of all, so that she will take care of them. So when they got to the Americas, when in the United States, there were the drums, and those practices were completely forbidden by the owners of these enslaved people. So, but they kept their chants. Okay, and that's where gospel music, the spirituals, gospel music, later on jazz developed. And then if you go into the story of jazz, from jazz it goes back to like hip hop, like it just evolved into hip hop. In the Caribbean, have you ever heard, and you probably have heard this saying before, todo negro tiene su domingo, every black has a Sunday.
Right.
So it goes back all the way to those times of when they were oppressed as slaves, and you will give them the Sundays to kind of like just be able to practice their traditions. And there was a lot of juxtaposition there, so they started using some of the elements that they already had in hands, like barrels. So like so they repurpose the barrels and then they will make drums with them. So that's how all of this started happening. Like the cowbells, that's the cowbell is actual a bell that goes on a cow. In Africa they have something called that they in Spanish they call it la muela, which is like a piece of metal that they use to plow the land, you know. So they used
Oh,
to
so
use
they
that.
used to use that instead of the bill. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Wow. Um, so fascinating. So now, how long have you been dancing with your company, but also feeling like you had a calling for the history?
So in February of 2021, we just turned 19 years old. So our company has been around for that long in the state of North Carolina. Um, we started just informally, just teaching some classes and having fun with it because we wanted some more people to dance our style because we started with on two. But then I had my car accident, the one that led me to get medical discharge from the Marines. So because I couldn't dance, I started to learn. I wanted to learn more about the music and how to play instruments. Like my purpose was like I want to learn how to play the congas and the claves so people can follow. And but then that got I started learning more about like the history of the conga drum, the history of the clave, and like you were just reacting now. It's like that's this is so interesting. Like, and the more that I was researching about this, the more I kind of like felt the connection with the music. It's a story of a struggle, right? And
Mm-hmm.
overcoming. It's like of
Mm-hmm.
survival. So it's like,
Right.
and especially me going through that time, that I was trying to recover, learning how to walk again. And I was like, okay, I can overcome this myself. So it inspired me in a way to kind of like get better. So I started then, and then I have a couple of mentors through the years, like the Afro-Cuban dance master Pupi Insua, who passed away over a decade ago. I was able to actually meet Cuban Pete, Pedro Aguilar, and his dance partner at the time, Barbara. Barbara, I can't remember her last name. Again, they also passed away as well. So of course, Eddie Torres, who is like the mentor of all these mambo salsa teachers right now, like from New York City. My first dance instructor is Mael Otero, and then right now I'm kind of like have a mentorship with Marisol Blanco, another Afro-Cuban dance master, and also good friends with Dr. David Garcia from UNC, who is a really good friend of mine, and he always send me some great resources for me to continue my research.
Ah, well, now that you're a master and you're teaching,
I don't know
and
if
I would consider you a master. 19
thank you.
years could, it's a mastery. um, do you go around the country teaching others? I mean, aside from your company here?
Well, before the pandemic and before children, I used to travel quite a bit. I used to travel all over the country, a few times internationally, about teaching not just the dance, but my approach to the dance and the teachings. Because I think as a dance instructor, it is not my responsibility just to teach you some steps, but also teach you the culture and where you can find more things so you can continue learning. Because I do not want for the next generation of dancers to have a watered down version of our culture because that's not gonna serve any good for anybody. So just like just like your grandmother was teaching your brothers and yourself how to dance, it was her responsibility to teach you part of their culture. So as a dance instructor, I consider myself that it's my responsibility to teach the next generation.
Wow. So you had mentioned the conversation about on two. Can you
Yes.
explain to me what I know that that's a term that I've heard a lot in dance in salsa, but I'm intuitive, so I'm not sure what does that mean?
So that's a term that it became popular here in the States. Okay, and it was a way that Eddie Torres started using to describe his style of dancing. So he's the one, the initiator of that term. With he had a mentor. Her name was Miss Laberta. She was a ballroom dancer. So it seemed like together they kind of like came out with that term because they break on the second beat. So for instance, if I count like this, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, because salsa is written a 4 by 4. That means that when you break forward or back, it's on that second beat. So instead of one forward, 2, 4, one back, 3, 4, 1 forward. So that's what meaning breaking on two.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So versus breaking on one means you break on the first beat. So you got to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the most common ones that what I hear in the States.
Oh, well, now
So
that makes sense. I never knew what they were talking about because I just, I just dance.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Now I've been trained in dance in other things, but not in Latin.
yeah.
That's just
So
innate.
yeah, and then the approach is because like when you dance on two, you it matches the clave and the conga drum on the accents to do to do or ah 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 no, and then but when you're dancing on one, it follows more of the melodic rhythms into it, like from the jazz, like this da 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 da. So it's just a different way to interpret the music. There's nothing wrong with either one, and they're all both of them use the same steps, same figures. So it's like it just kind of like lands into a different layer of the music.
Due to this pandemic, are you teaching still?
So I have not been able to teach any face-to-face classes. We were one of the first dance companies that we just shut down all activities, all our classes, all our socials, or all our events that we did, that we organized through the year, which are quite a few. And so we shut everything down. We also had a few presentations that we are going to do for some universities and some other organizations, cultural organizations like Diamante, and so we just couldn't do it anymore. So we completely shut down all operations. However, I was doing some presentations, especially about the history and all the stuff that we're talking about, virtually online to different schools. And actually, I did one for the governor, which that was kind of cool. So
Nice, very
yeah.
nice.
So we did that, and that's what I've been doing right now. And I have a couple of friends of mine that they're still operating around the country, and so I've been doing some like training sessions with their students. So I've been
Good.
staying busy with that, but not face-to-face classes.
Well, maybe now that the governor on Saturday, yeah, no,
Mhm.
Friday, on Friday, he changed the arts venues and dance studios rules. So
Mhm.
now you can have up to 30% of
Yeah.
students live. So maybe you can start again.
Yes.
Well,
I'm high
if
hope.
people, yeah, right. If people want to take a class with you, is there a website or something that they need to contact?
Yes, we have our website is mambodinamico.com, and we have all the information there. We have our syllabus, our classes, different packages for people to different offers. Um, like I said, right now, actually, we want to start a virtual class, and on March 10th. So yeah, so we're doing that and try to slowly getting back into the rhythm and see how what we can do.
Well, great. Well, Beto, it's been great having you. Very informative. I think we need to do something again, um, hopefully soon, and talk about the history a little bit more because it was fascinating.
Oh, thank you. It is fascinating, and you refer to me as a master. I The more that I learn, the more that I realize that I do not know. You know, for instance, like my next quest is going to be the Afro Puerto Rican dances, the Afro Boricuan dances, and that is another world by itself, and it's also so fascinating. So I just want to spending next of my life going from island to island, just realizing what else I can pick up from them.
Why not?
Right.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today here in compARTE with Diamante Arts and Cultural Center.
Bye.
Well, that was a great interview with Betto Herrera. Don't forget to watch every Tuesday of the first Tuesday of every month, and follow us on Diamante Arts and Cultural Center's Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, everywhere. We are looking for performers and cultural groups to present themselves in the Ritmo Latino Festival coming up in May. So if you're interested, please follow the pages on Facebook, and you will have a registration form that you need to fill out. Well, thank you so much for joining me here on compARTE Happy Hour. And I'm Lizette Cruz Watko. See you next time. Join me again next month for another episode of compARTE Happy Hour.